signings to talk about up next on a special bonus edition of Fantasy Baseball Today.
Alcantara, Soroka, you look so good in Boca. Peralta, Manoa, bounce back for Aaron Nola. Giolito, Castillo, Yoshida, Monson,
Gallo and Votto. Value so high, but ADP so low. Frank Love's hit some kind of Joe. Now let's get on with the show.
Happy Kokomo Sunday, and welcome in to this bonus edition of Fantasy Baseball Today on December 18th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White, and you're probably asking, why did Frank play the Kokomo Friday theme?
I'm asking that.
We had huge breaking news Sunday night, Scott. Connor Joe was traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Oh, you just wanted to get the Connor Joe shout out in there.
I love
that is the news people are tuning in to hear. Yes,
that is exactly it. Anywho, let's talk about the main reason you're here, and that is to hear about Dansby Swanson. So let's start there. A pretty big deal here with the Chicago Cubs. 7 years, $177 million for Dansby Swanson, again to the Cubs. Finished 13th overall in Roto last year. Careers across the board. Career numbers across the board. Scott, 277 batting average, 25 homers, 99 runs, 96 RBI, 18 steals, legit 5-category contributor. He was awesome last year. How awesome will he be with the Cubs? What do you think?
Less awesome than last year.
Probably.
I mean, if for no other reason, because it's a worse lineup, right? The Braves have one of the best lineups, a little worse without him now, I guess. But I'm looking at the 99 runs and the 96 RBI Dansby Swanson had last year and thinking, yeah, that's probably not going to happen again. The rest of the line, he could probably do again. I mean, the strikeout rate is a bit on the high. It's always been a bit on the high side for him. 26% last year. 277 batting average versus 257 XBA. I was already thinking, I guess, Dansby Swanson's going to take just a little bit of a step back next year. And I don't think, I guess the move to the Cub makes it more probable, but I don't think it's going to be like a huge step back either. He'll probably be a 25 homer, 20 steal guy, something close to that, just like he was. And that's pretty valuable at shortstop. I was looking at my Roto rankings, or my 5x5 category rankings, and I had him just ahead of Xander Bogaerts. And I'm not inclined to move him below Bogaerts with this move because I have questions about Bogaerts' power output in San Diego, and obviously a better source of batting average, but not as much of a base stealer. I looked at my points rankings, and I have Dansby Swanson. I had Dansby Swanson just ahead of Wander Franco, who has yet to put together a full season in the majors, but the little he played last year, even though, it was kind of underwhelming, nearly as many head-to-head points per game as Dansby Swanson because that plate discipline's so good. So I think, okay, now in points leagues, I'll probably take Wander Franco ahead of Swanson. So I guess to sum up, not moving him down at shortstop in Roto, moving him down one spot in head-to-head points. And, will certainly be a worthy starter in fantasy, even though he's wearing a Cubs uniform now.
I'm sorry, Scott. I know this is, look, you probably don't want to see Dansby Swanson leave, but, it's not nearly as devastating as like other things that have happened.
No, it's not really comparable. I don't think there will ever be anything. I mean, the whole world got a glimpse of the emotions of that when Freddie Freeman himself visited Atlanta last year. So there's not much to compare that to. It's disappointing as a Braves fan, but I think, I think the writing's been on the wall for a while with this. He just got married. His wife is a soccer player in Chicago.
Oh,
so
nice.
Whole new chapter of Dansby Swanson's life here.
a little peek behind the curtain here, Scott. But when it looked like Aaron Judge was going to sign with the San Francisco Giants, I was preparing a monologue just to let everyone know how sad I was, because I think that would have actually turned out to be pretty similar to Freddie Freeman leaving the Braves. As Judge has been with the Yankees not as long as Freeman was, but I was pretty hurt. I'm happy he came back. But let's put a bow on this Dansby Swanson conversation. Something we normally look at is the StatCast numbers. How many home runs would a player hit if they played all their games in this ballpark? Interestingly enough, Dansby Swanson hit 25 homers last year playing in Atlanta. StatCast says he would have hit 33 if he played all of his games in Wrigley.
Yeah.
I don't really understand it because I looked at the park factors for right-handed power, and the Cubs, Wrigley Field actually ranks a little bit lower than Atlanta. So I'm not really sure how this kind of adds up here, but are you expecting some kind of big power jump now from Dansby?
I have a guess as to why the number is so large at Wrigley Field if you played every game at Wrigley Field. And I think it's just because, we talk about how strange Coors Field is pretty often. Wrigley Field's pretty strange, too, in another way. It plays very differently depending on the direction the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
And so maybe those readings were skewed toward days when the wind was blowing out. The readings. I mean, I don't know how they actually calculate the expected home run number, but I could see how it would be hard to account for that variable, and maybe that number is skewed a little high for Dansby Swanson. Yeah, if you just look at the park factors, nothing special about Wrigley Field overall for hitters, and I wouldn't be counting on Dansby Swanson transforming into a 35 homer guy all of a sudden based on that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Early ADP, Scott, for Dansby Swanson is 78.4 over at the NFBC. He's going just behind Corey Seager and O'Neal Cruz. What do you think of that price tag for Dansby Swanson around those other names?
Behind Corey Seager and who else?
O'Neal Cruz, just behind him.
Well, I have him ranked ahead of Cruz. I mean, it's NFBC, and Cruz obviously has monstrous upside, so you could see how he might be. Yeah. He might trend a little high on that side, especially. But I do have Swanson behind Seager. I thought maybe I'd be an exception there, but so I am a little surprised to see that early ADP on NFBC also has Seager going higher than Swanson, as I do.
I have a poll up on the live stream on YouTube right now. Which shortstop would you rather draft in 2023, Dansby Swanson or Corey Seager? It's not close. Corey Seager, 73% of the vote as of now, which I think makes sense. How does this affect the rest of the Cubs, Scott? Nico Horner will now play second base. And are you looking to give a boost to any other Cubs? I mean, could add some counting stats. Obviously, Dansby Swanson, pretty good hitter in his own right. Are you looking to boost anyone here? Nico Horner, Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, Matt Mervis, Cody Bellinger. I wouldn't call this a good lineup, Scott, but I would call it an interesting lineup.
It's interesting.
I want to see what they could do.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think adding Dansby Swanson's going to be transformative in a real, clear, tangible way. I mean, it helps the lineup throughout. Sort of. I mean, it is a little, you look at some of Dansby Swanson's numbers and like, for instance, the 329 on base percentage. It was a 311 on base percentage last year. So, I mean, I think more, I just said, Dansby Swanson's out of the Braves lineup now, so it's a little worse. But I think more the Braves lineup was helping Dansby Swanson than Dansby Swanson helping the Braves lineup. He's kind of, if you just look at those percentages, I'm not trying to say he isn't a good player, but a lot of his value is defensive, and offensively, he may be better from a fantasy perspective than from a real world perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking to raise any other Cubs values. Obviously, Nick Madrigal's value plummets because he's out of the lineup now, and Nico Horner's moving over to second base. But
right.
Let's
talk about the Atlanta Braves. Obviously, looks like Vaughn Grissom will now step in as the starting shortstop for the Braves. There's still some time in the offseason. They could potentially make a move. I don't think that's going to happen. Vaughn Grissom played 41 games with the Braves last season. He hit 291 with 5 homers and 5 steals. But it was kind of a split 41 games. The first 25 or so of those were really good. His final 15 games, Vaughn Grissom hit 174 with a 30% strikeout rate. I still think that there is a ton of upside here with Vaughn Grissom, Scott. Again, in one of the best lineups in baseball. The early ADP for Grissom is 198. And I'd say the closer we get to the start of the season, without there being any other option for Atlanta, the more we're going to start to see that price come up a little bit on Vaughn Grissom.
Yeah, I mean, stock definitely, Vaughn Grissom is the player whose value changes the most with the Dansby Swanson signing. And yeah, it could still change. Maybe the Braves sign an Elvis Andrus. I think even if that happened, it would be more to push Grissom than to overtake him. But, he's out there. There's been talk of them pursuing Willy Adames. I kind of feel like, they obviously already made a big trade involving the Brewers. So, there's no law saying they can't make another, but I don't know. People were speculating as that deal was unfolding with the Sean Murphy deal that Adames might be part of it, and he ultimately wasn't. And there have been strong reviews about Grissom. Grissom's been working with Ron Washington this offseason on playing shortstop. Ron Washington, a defensive guru, as everybody knows who's seen Moneyball. And the reports have been glowing, even though, the thinking heading into the offseason is Grissom isn't really a viable option at shortstop. That was the position he played primarily in the minors, but of course, Major League's a different story. So I think my hunch is the plan is just to make him the shortstop, or at least give him a chance to win the job in spring training. And if he does, presuming he doesn't fall flat on his face, then he becomes an interesting fantasy option. You say there's upside there, and you just have to look at the minor league numbers last year between high Class A and Double A in only 96 games. He had 324 with 14 homers, 27 steals, and 899 OPS. His numbers the previous year between low A and high A were pretty similar. Makes a lot of contact. The exit velocity readings are not that impressive, but he made it work in the minors, and is still very young, getting stronger. He should. I think if he does get a job, get the shortstop job, get a chance to play every day for the Braves, the production might not be that unlike Swanson. More batting average, fewer home runs would be my guess, but the stolen base total could be similar. And that would obviously still be a great pick in the late rounds of a roto draft as your middle infield option. So definitely a sleeper now is Vaughn Grissom.
I think the only thing with Grissom is the risk is if he's not great defensively, or if he struggles defensively, maybe they use that as a reason to send him back down to get seasoning, or if he struggles offensively. Either way, if Vaughn Grissom struggles, there is risk that he loses out on playing time. Obviously, Dansby Swanson doesn't have that risk with the Chicago Cubs. But
I'm not saying you should draft them equivalently. I'm just saying that.
And they're not going anywhere. He's going 120 picks later. So
sure. I'm just saying that's kind of the upside. What you're hoping for from Grissom is similar, but with more batting average, maybe fewer home runs. And, obviously at the point you're going to be able to draft him, the reward is well worth the risk.
Grissom right now, I mentioned the ADP right around 200. He's going just after names like Thairo Estrada, Jorge Mateo. Again, as it looks like Grissom will be the starter, I think he's going to move up a little bit. So I would take him ahead of those names that I just mentioned. I think an interesting one, and Grissom only has second base eligibility to start the year. If he's playing shortstop, he'll obviously pick up shortstop eligibility and he'll be dual eligible. Jonathan India is going at pick 180 right now, Scott. I think that is a very interesting debate. If we get to March 1st, Vaughn Grissom is the guy. Are you taking a Grissom or a Jonathan India as your middle infielder later on in drafts?
I mean, 5x5, I'd take Grissom. Give me the guy who's likely to give you some steals.
I think India could run a little bit, though.
He did. How many did he have as a rookie? 14?
I think 10, 12.
Something like that. Yeah. I would take Grissom at 5x5. Now, if you're talking a points league, because India has such good plate discipline, of course, Grissom doesn't strike out much. But I might give the edge to India in points leagues.
All right, let's slide over to some other moves. We do have some vets that are on the move. Basically a trade here, Scott. J.D. Martinez goes to the Dodgers. Justin Turner goes to the Red Sox. Let's start off with J.D Martinez, now 35 years old. Had an okay season last year, started to show signs of the age, 274 batting average, 16 home runs in 139 games for J.D Martinez. He had a 57-game stretch from June through August where Martinez hit 1 home run over 57 games. Now, for what it's worth, I mentioned he hit 16 with the Red Sox. According to StatCast, they say he would have hit 24 if he played all of his games in Los Angeles. Obviously, he's going to be hitting in the middle of still a pretty good lineup, not as great as we've seen in years past, but I still think they could be top 10 in runs scored or so. Scott, are you excited with this move, J.D. Martinez to the Dodgers?
I guess I'm a little more likely to draft him, but I kind of think he's done being a real asset in fantasy, and the fact he's DH only now doesn't help. So you're obviously blocking a spot where you could potentially put a much more valuable hitter. So I have not been motivated. Like he's slid pretty far in the drafts I've been a part of, but I've never been looking to take him at the point he goes. This is a better situation for him with the Dodgers, at least in theory. I would imagine they're not going to look to play him in the outfield ever.
No.
And I imagine they will look to play Max Muncy at DH sometimes. So there may become a playing time issue there. Maybe. But yeah, stock up a little bit for J.D. Martinez, but still just not somebody to take in the first half of drafts, I would say.
The early ADP for Martinez is 238.7 over at the NFBC. No doubt. Once players sign, they usually tend to move up a round or two, and maybe he moves up a little bit more than that because he signed with the Dodgers, which, again, pretty damn good lineup. He is utility only as well, too, so I'll point that out. No outfield eligibility for J.D. Martinez, only utility, so that obviously hurts his value as well. It also could hurt some other value here, Scott, because roster resource now has Miguel Vargas on the bench. I don't know if that will remain the case, but there is one more player in the mix here now with the Dodgers, with J.D. Martinez coming over. They have Max Muncy penciled in at third base for now, Chris Taylor at second, James Outman in left field, Trace Thompson in center field. Like, I think Miguel Vargas could easily play one of the corner outfield positions if they want him to. What are your thoughts on Miguel Vargas now?
He could, or Chris Taylor could.
Right.
I don't think I don't think anybody imagines Chris Taylor being a full-time second baseman. He played 22 games there last year. So I don't think, despite roster resource making out the Dodgers lineup that way, that's really the way it's going to be. It's going to be most days. And, not to bring up another transaction that we're going to talk about in a minute, but I was kind of thinking Justin Turner would be back in the mix at some point, and now we know he's not. He's signed with the Red Sox, so kind of the Dodgers and Red Sox traded DHs here. But obviously, J.D. Martinez isn't capable of playing third the way Justin Turner was. Third is Miguel Vargas' natural position. I don't see Max Muncy just being everyday third baseman either. I think he moves around like he always has. So I think the Justin Turner signing is the clearest indication yet that Miguel Vargas is going to be a big part of this team from the start. And I still think there's a path for Michael Busch to be as well. I don't know that's going to be on opening day, and he's not as interesting as Miguel Vargas overall, but power hitting second baseman, good on base skills, somebody worth knowing about in fantasy as well. I would have rather J.D. Martinez not been in the mix. That does take up one more lineup spot that could have gone to the young guys, but I don't think it's a deal breaker as far as Miguel Vargas's 2023 prospects are concerned.
All right, let's talk about Justin Turner. You mentioned, too, the Red Sox. Red beard to Red Sox. Now 38 years old is Justin Turner, and still pretty productive last year. 278 batting average, 13 homers, 81 RBI in 128 games. Looks like for now, Justin Turner penciled in at DH with Rafael Devers playing third base. Hopefully they can come to an agreement on a contract extension. If not, maybe the Red Sox are looking to shop Rafael Devers. But for now, looks like Devers at third, Turner at DH. The Red Sox also DFA'd Eric Hosmer this weekend. So it looks like Tristan Casas will be the starting first base.
Yes, it does.
Everything just kind of works out pretty well here, Scott. The early ADP for Justin Turner is 349. I also think that he will be on the rise now. Would you rather take a shot late in drafts on Justin Turner or J.D. Martinez?
Martinez. I mean, obviously, Justin Turner plays a much thinner position, and depending how deep your league is, he might have to be drafted. But I'm even more pessimistic about his chances of bouncing back than I am Turner's. He had 278, 13 home runs last year in about 130 games. So it wasn't a full season's worth, but he's not going to get a full season's worth at his age, So a decent batting average with a dozen or so homers, it's not really moving the needle for me in fantasy. I think Justin Turner's time in the sun is over. But I'm glad you brought up Eric Hosmer being DFA'd, because I am pretty excited about Tristan Casas. In fact, I think the decision between Miguel Vargas and Tristan Casas is a pretty interesting one. I would be inclined, I think, in points leagues to say Casas because of how much he's going to walk. Probably lean Vargas and Roto because I think better bet for batting average and will provide some stolen bases as opposed to the none Casas will. But it's an exciting time for both of them. They're two players I like. They're both first base eligible opening the year. Obviously, we think Vargas could pick up eligibility at other spots.
I'm with you, Scott. I love the idea of Tristan Casas as a corner infielder if you play in a deeper Roto league, or just pick him up as a bench option in a points league and see where he goes from there. But he ended the year very strong. Last couple of weeks of the season, Tristan Casas was blasting home runs all over the place. He was going opposite field over the green monster as a left-handed batter. It was just really, really impressive to see that down the stretch. So I do like Tristan Casas quite a bit as well. I think if we know Matt Mervis is up on opening day, I think that's a pretty interesting conversation too. Tristan Casas versus Matt Mervis there. Red Sox versus Cubs. A few other signings here. We had Michael Brantley back with the Astros, also now 35 years old. Last year, he hit 288 with 5 home runs in 64 games, had more walks than strikeouts, and has hit 288 or better each of the past 6 seasons. Some of those partial seasons because Michael Brantley has been quite injury prone. The early ADP, Scott, is non-existent. Do you have any interest in Michael Brantley back with the Astros?
It is kind of the best case scenario for him, I would say, an organization that knows him well already and room in the outfield to play him. Or maybe he would primarily play DH and Jordan Alvarez primarily left field. I imagine the two would trade off to some degree. I think Michael Brantley still has, as thin as outfield is, he plays better in points leagues because he's not big on counting stats like home runs and steals, but great plate discipline. But, if you're talking a Roto league, you got 5 outfield spots to fill. So I think he matters in that format too with this signing. Isn't going to play a ton because we expect him to miss time with injury. He breaks down constantly, and he missed most of last year, never making it back from a shoulder surgery that he had. So you shouldn't expect miracles from Michael Brantley, but I think he can still be a useful piece in either a late pick in a points league or a late pick in a 5 outfielder categories league.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning, Scott. Bad job by me, but you brought up the surgery that Michael Brantley had last year, arthroscopic labral surgery on his right shoulder. Fun fact, Scott, I have a partial tear of my labrum, my right shoulder.
I think we all do eventually.
Yeah.
Not to undermine your pain there, but
yeah, it doesn't feel too good, man. I've tried some physical therapy. I might have to go the Michael Brantley route and have surgery in a couple of years. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it doesn't feel too good. Anyway, Michael Brantley back with the Astros. A few other signings. Andrew Benintendi to the White Sox. Pretty big deal here, Scott. Did not expect 5 years, $75 million. I mean, I guess he's still young enough where he can earn a 5-year contract, but
that's crazy.
I found it kind of interesting myself.
Like the size of the contracts handed out this offseason, both length and dollars, have just been mind-blowing for the most part. But this I think was the biggest one because Andrew Benintendi strikes me as a player who a year or two ago would have been getting like 2 years, $16 million, and he's getting 5 years, $75 million. He's getting, Jose Abreu got 3 years, $58 million. And obviously he can't play the outfield and the White Sox have a bigger need there. I get that. But I mean, Jose Abreu, it's bat versus Andrew Benintendi. It's no contest.
Yeah, no, it is not. Last year for Benintendi, He hit 304 with 5 homers and 8 steals in 126 games combined between the Royals and the Yankees. For what it's worth, he would have hit 10 home runs in Chicago if he played all of his games there. So potentially a slight uptick here for the power, Scott. Ground ball rate climbed a little bit last year for Benintendi. I don't have a ton of optimism. I think he's really good for batting average. Maybe he's 10 to 15 home runs, 5 to 10 steals. He's more of a floor play, I think, in a deeper outfield, a deeper roto league than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, kind of, I do think Benintendi deserves to be drafted ahead of Michael Brantley, who I was just kind of talking up. Like, Michael Brantley's not going to be drafted in all leagues, and Benintendi won't be either. But Benintendi's more likely to be than Brantley. I just think in the end, their contributions are probably going to be not too dissimilar.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Andrew Benintendi, the early ADP is 240 for Michael Brantley. I mentioned it was non-existent. He's going outside of the top 500 right now. So obviously that will change. I did want to ask you, Scott, real quick about the White Sox, how this could affect potentially prospect Oscar Colas, someone that we talked to the Welsh about recently. We did, our outfield prospect episode, and I've already drafted Colas in a deeper draft and hold league. And I was pretty excited about the chance of maybe him could have been up on opening day, maybe soon thereafter. What do you think about, Colas now that Benintendi signed to play the outfield for the White Sox?
I mean, if we're assuming Eloy Jimenez is primarily a DH now, then they still don't have a right fielder, really. Gavin Sheets is currently slotted in on roster resource, which, they played him a decent amount last year. Maybe he is their opening day right fielder, Gavin Sheets, but I don't think he's the answer in right field, and Oscar Colas will be soon enough.
Okay. Yeah. So another name there, a prospect to pay attention to later on in your drafts, especially in leagues with 5 outfielders. Joey Gallo to the Twins. Not sure how much this actually matters, Scott, because since the start of 2020, Joey Gallo is hitting 183 with a 36% strikeout rate across 336 games. As of now, looks like Gallo is going to play one of the corners. Max Kepler will play the other corner with Alex Kirilloff at DH for however long he can play DH. And then Luis Ariz at first base. Do you see anything, or do you have any optimism that Joey Gallo can get back on track with the Twins now?
I don't. I kind of think the Twins must to do this. I mean, they're not bringing back Miguel Sano. Mm-hmm. Again, Sano's not an outfielder. Gallo is, so maybe that's the entire explanation there. But I don't think, given the route Joey Gallo's career has taken the past couple of years, I don't think you bring him in. Certainly not at the price tag the Twins are paying if you don't see something. But I wouldn't say I'm optimistic. I mean, the Dodgers didn't fix Joey Gallo, so why would I have confidence the Twins would do what they didn't? I don't. So I'm out on Gallo unless he's just a dirt cheap bench option in a deep roto league. And even then, I'm probably going to look like at an Oscar Colas instead. So he's young enough and he has enough of a track record, Gallo does, that you can't rule it out, but I am not optimistic.
How do you rank these 3 outfielders that just re-signed or signed in a new place? Michael Brantley, Benintendi, Joey Gallo in a 5 outfielder league, let's say.
5 outfielder league, so I assume we're talking 5x5 scoring. I would say Benintendi, Gallo, Brantley, but none of them I'm excited to draft.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You're probably excited to draft this guy because we've got to end again, Scott, with the biggest news of the weekend. Connor Joe traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates for pitching prospect Nick Garcia. I mean, I didn't look into Nick Garcia, but he's got to be great if you're getting someone like Connor Joe for him. In all seriousness, I really don't think there's much here, Scott. I hope Connor Joe can revive his career and get some playing time with the Pirates, but it's probably not going to happen.
The most interesting thing about Connor Joe was that he played in Colorado, which he no longer does. So I was already out, even expecting him to be in Colorado. Still, I'm definitely out now.
Yeah. As soon as he was traded to the Pirates, I did go online and look to see how much a Pirates fitted hat cost because I was, I'll be a Pirates fan now. Why not? Yeah. Support my guy, Connor Joe, assuming he can get any playing time. But again, let's just quickly recap. Joey Gallo to the Twins. Andrew Benintendi to the White Sox on a 5-year deal, no less. Michael Brantley is back with the Astros. Justin Turner to the Red Sox. J.D Martinez to the Dodgers. So those two guys swapping spots there. Expected to play DH for both of their respective teams. And then the big news of the weekend, Dansby Swanson to the Cubs on a 7-year, $177 million deal. We're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching this bonus edition of Fantasy Baseball Today. We'll be back again tomorrow night with Greg Jewett to talk relief pitcher early rankings. See you then. Bye-bye.